The great celebration halls of Nexus Prime sparkled with 1,000 different colors. Beings from across the galaxy had gathered for the most important day in their history. Today marked exactly 48,000 years since the Great Liberation. The day when humanity had finally vanished from the stars. Commander Zix-9 of the Ethereal Collective floated above the crowd, his energy form pulsing with satisfaction. Around him, crystalline beings from the Zephyrian Empire clicked their approval, while the shapeshifters of the Biosynthesis Commonwealth rippled through dozens of celebration forms. Every species in the galaxy was here to remember their greatest victory. My fellow beings, Zix-9 broadcast telepathically to the assembled masses, today we celebrate freedom from the most savage race the galaxy has ever known. The humans were destroyers, warmongers who knew only violence and conquest, but we enlightened them. We showed them a better way, and they finally ascended beyond their primitive nature. The crowd cheered in a dozen different ways. Energy beings flashed brighter, crystal entities rang like bells, and the organic races made sounds of joy. This was the story they all knew. This was the truth they had been taught for thousands of generations. High above the celebration, in the monitoring station that watched the deep void between galaxies, sensor operator Kef-12 noticed something strange on her screens. The Zephyrian's crystalline form vibrated with confusion as she stared at the readings. "Supervisor," she called to the station commander, "I'm detecting unusual energy signatures in Sector 7749. Supervisor. Next floated over, his gaseous form shifting colors as he examined the data. "Impossible. Nothing exists in that void. The humans fled there when they ascended, but that was 48,000 years ago. The sensors must be malfunctioning." Kef-12 ran the scan again. The readings were still there. In fact, they were getting stronger. "Sir, these energy signatures, they don't match anything in our databases. The power levels are off the charts." "Run a full diagnostic on the sensor array," Next ordered. "The celebration must be interfering with our equipment." But down in the archives beneath Nexus Prime, archivist Tel-4 was having his own problems. The ancient crystal storage units that held the galaxy's history were acting strangely. Whenever he tried to access the oldest records about humans, the data seemed corrupted. Not damaged, exactly, but wrong somehow. Tel-4 had spent centuries studying the Great Liberation. According to all official records, humans had been a primitive species that relied on crude technology and brute force. They had tried to conquer the galaxy through violence until the enlightened races had shown them the error of their ways. Eventually, the humans had seen the truth and departed peacefully to ascend to a higher plane of existence. But tonight, as Tel-4 tried to prepare historical displays for the celebration, the old records were showing different information. Images of human technology that looked impossibly advanced. Data about human cities that spanned entire continents. Most disturbing of all, references to something called the Devourer Protocol and mentions of humans fighting to protect the galaxy, not conquer it. "This can't be right," Tel-4 muttered, his bioluminescent patches flickering with worry. He had seen these records thousands of times before. They had never contained this information. Meanwhile, on the outer rim of the galaxy, Captain Vor II of the patrol fleet was investigating reports of strange activity near the ruins on Kepler 452b. The dead world had once been a human colony, or so the history books claimed. Now it was nothing but twisted metal and broken stone, a monument to human destructiveness. But as Vor II's ship approached the planet, his instruments were going crazy. The ruins were emitting energy. Not just any energy, but organized patterns that looked almost like signals. "Scan the surface," Vor II ordered his crew. "Something's happening down there." The scan results made no sense. The ruins, which had been dead for 48,000 years, were showing signs of activation. Deep underground, massive structures were powering up, structures that the scanners couldn't properly identify. "Captain," his communications officer called out, "I'm detecting similar energy spikes from 17 other human ruin sites across the sector. They're all activating simultaneously." Vor, too, felt a chill run through his carapace. Human ruins didn't activate. They were supposed to be dead reminders of a primitive past. But the energy readings he was seeing suggested technology far more advanced than anything the current galaxy possessed. Back on Nexus Prime, the celebration was reaching its peak. The galaxy's greatest leaders were giving speeches about the wonderful peace that had lasted for 48,000 years. How they had built a perfect civilization based on cooperation and enlightenment, far superior to the violent ways of the ancient humans. Emperor Crystallis of the Zephyrian Empire was addressing the crowd, his massive crystal form refracting the light into beautiful patterns. "We have created a utopia," he declared. "Our technology is perfect. Our society is harmonious. We have achieved what the primitive humans never could." But even as he spoke, reports were flooding in from across the galaxy. The deep space monitoring stations were all detecting the same impossible energy signatures. The human ruins were all activating. And strangest of all, the ancient navigation beacons that had guided ships for millennia were beginning to broadcast new signals. In the depths of space, something was approaching. Admiral Thex Prime of the Confederation Defense Fleet received the first coherent report while the celebration was still ongoing. His aide, a nervous ethereal named Flux 7, materialized beside his command chair with obvious distress. "Admiral, we're receiving priority alerts from every sector. Unknown vessels are approaching the galaxy. Estimated arrival time is less than 6 hours." Admiral Thex Prime's biomechanical form straightened. "Unknown vessels? From which species? The Outer Rim Confederacy? The Independent Worlds?" "No, sir," Flux 7 replied, his energy form flickering with fear. "The vessels are approaching from the galactic void, from the direction the humans fled 48,000 years ago." For a moment, Admiral Thex Prime was silent. Then he activated the fleet-wide communication system. "All ships, this is Admiral Thex Prime. Cancel shore leave immediately. Battle stations. Whatever's coming, we need to be ready." But even as he gave the orders, Admiral Thex Prime wondered what could possibly threaten the galaxy's perfect civilization. Their technology was the pinnacle of development. Their fleets were mighty. They had learned from the mistakes of the primitive humans and built something far superior. The energy signatures in the void grew stronger. Across the galaxy, ancient human installations continued to activate, sending signals into space. And in the archives, more corrupted records appeared, telling a different story about humanity than anyone remembered. The celebration on Nexus Prime continued, but in the command centers and monitoring stations, a growing sense of unease spread among the galaxy's defenders. Something was coming home. Something that had been gone for 48,000 years. As the first dimensional rifts began to tear open in the darkness between stars, the galaxy's perfect civilization was about to learn that their greatest victory might have been their greatest mistake. The humans were returning, and everything the galaxy thought they knew was about to change forever. The liberation they had celebrated for so long was about to be revealed as something else entirely. And the primitive, savage humans of their history. Books were nothing like the force that was now approaching their carefully ordered worlds. The first rift opened above the mining world of Titan 7 at exactly 0347 Galactic Standard Time. Reality tore like fabric, revealing a swirling vortex of impossible colors. The miners working the night shift stopped their excavators and stared up at the sky in wonder and terror. What emerged from the rift defied every law of physics the galaxy understood. The ship was massive beyond comprehension, larger than most space stations. Its hull seemed to be made of a dark material that absorbed light yet somehow gleamed with inner fire. Strange symbols ran along its surface, symbols that hurt to look at directly. As it cleared the rift, 16 more tiers opened across the star system. More ships emerged, each one different in design but sharing the same impossible construction. Some were sleek and predatory like cosmic sharks. Others were angular and geometric, covered in what looked like moving tattoos of light. The largest vessels resembled floating cities, their surfaces dotted with millions of lights. On Nexus Prime, the celebration came to an abrupt halt as emergency sirens wailed across the station. Admiral Thex Prime rushed to the command center, his biomechanical legs clicking against the metal floor. The main display showed 17 star systems, all with the same terrifying sight: unknown fleets emerging from dimensional rifts. "Report!" Admiral Thex Prime barked at his communications officer. "Sir, we're detecting massive fleet movements in 17 sectors simultaneously. The vessels—" "Sir, our computers can't properly analyze their construction. The materials don't match anything in our databases." Emperor Crystallis materialized beside the Admiral, his crystal form refracting the emergency lights into sharp patterns. "This is impossible. No species in the galaxy has technology like this. Our surveillance network covers everything." "Maybe they're not from this galaxy," Flux 7 suggested, his energy form flickering with nervous light. Then the communications came, every screen, every display, every communication device in the galaxy suddenly activated. The face that appeared was unmistakably human, but changed. The woman was tall and strong, with silver hair and eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of ages. Her skin had a subtle luminescence, and when she moved, it was with the fluid grace of someone completely comfortable with their own power. "Citizens of the galaxy," she said, her voice carrying clearly across light years. "I am Admiral Sarah Chen Okafor of the United Earth System Fleet. We have come home." The silence that followed was deafening. Across the galaxy, billions of beings stared at their screens in shock. The humans were supposed to be gone, ascended, primitive. This woman looked anything but primitive. "I know you have questions," Admiral Chen Okafor continued. 48,000 years is a long time. We've been away preparing for something we hoped would never come. But circumstances require our return." She paused, looking directly into the camera with eyes that seemed to see through space itself. "We ask that you stand down your fleets and allow us to reclaim our former territories. We have no desire for conquest. We're here to protect what we left behind." The transmission ended, leaving the galaxy in stunned silence. Admiral Thex Prime was the first to recover. "Impossible. The humans were primitive when they left. How could they have developed technology like this?" Emperor Crystallis's crystal form rang with anger. "It doesn't matter how they did it. They're making demands of us. The galaxy belongs to the enlightened species now. We won't be intimidated by returning primitives." The Emperor activated the Zephyrian Empire's command network. "This is Emperor Crystallis to all Imperial fleets. Deploy the Dreadnought Absolutism to intercept the human vessels. Show them that the galaxy has moved beyond their crude ways." The Dreadnought Absolutism was the pride of the Zephyrian fleet, a crystal ship, the size of a small moon, armed with reality-shearing weapons and protected by shields that could deflect the energy of a star. It had never been defeated in battle. The massive crystalline warship moved to intercept the human fleet near the agricultural world of Green 3. Its captain, War Commander Prism 9, was confident in his vessel's superiority. The humans might have bigger ships, but Zephyrian technology was the most advanced in the galaxy. "Attention human vessels," War Commander Prism 9 broadcast. "You are trespassing in Zephyrian space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." The response came from a ship that was barely a tenth the size of the Dreadnought Absolutism. A sleek, dark vessel that looked more like a work of art than a weapon of war. "This is Commander Martinez, of the UES Defiant. War Commander Prism 9, you are ordered to stand down. This system contains human installations that require our immediate attention. War Commander Prism 9's crystalline form vibrated with indignation. Human installations? There are no human installations in this system, only agricultural colonies established by the Biosynthesis Commonwealth. Check your deep scans, War Commander. Look beneath the surface. Prism 9 ordered a full planetary scan. What the results showed made his crystal structure crack with shock. Deep beneath the agricultural colonies were massive structures, ancient but clearly artificial, and they were all starting to activate. Impossible, Prism 9 whispered. Those structures have been there all along. Why didn't we detect them before? Because they were designed not to be detected until we returned, Commander Martinez replied calmly. War Commander, this is your final warning. Stand down or be disabled. War Commander Prism 9's pride would not allow him to retreat. All weapons. Target the human vessel. Fire! The dreadnought absolutism unleashed enough firepower to shatter a planet. Reality-tearing beams and quantum disruptors lanced out toward the tiny human ship, the weapons that had never failed to destroy their targets. The human ship didn't even move. Instead, something impossible happened. The weapons simply stopped existing when they reached the human vessel. Not blocked, not deflected. They ceased to be as if they had never been fired at all. Our turn, Commander Martinez said quietly. The human ship's response was a single beam of pale blue light. It touched the dreadnought absolutism's shields and passed through them like they weren't there. It struck the crystal hull, and something extraordinary happened. The mighty warship didn't explode. It didn't shatter. Instead, it simply stopped, working. Every system, every weapon, every engine shut down simultaneously. The crew was unharmed, but their ship was now nothing more than a very large crystal floating in space. Dreadnought Absolutism, this is Commander Martinez. Your vessel has been disabled but not destroyed. Your crew is safe. We suggest you use this time to reconsider your position. Across the galaxy, the demonstration was watched in stunned silence. The most powerful warship in known space had been neutralized by a human vessel 1/10 its size, using weapons that operated on principles. No one understood. Admiral Chen Okafor's face appeared on screens again, but this time her expression was sadder. We did not want to demonstrate our capabilities this way, she said. But we need you to understand. We are not the primitive humans you remember. We have spent 48,000 years preparing for something terrible, something that requires us to reclaim what we left behind. She gestured, and the view changed to show the human ruins across the galaxy. Except they weren't ruins anymore. Ancient installations were rising from the ground, unfolding like metallic flowers. Technology that had slept for millennia was awakening. These are not monuments to human failure, Admiral Chen Okafor explained. They are our gifts to you. Defense installations we left behind to protect the species we helped guide to the stars, but they only activate when we return. The implications hit the galaxy's leaders like a physical blow. The humans hadn't been primitive destroyers. They had been guardians, protectors. The very foundations of galactic civilization were built on lies. You have 48 hours to evacuate your forces from human territorial space, Admiral Chen Okafor continued. We will begin reactivating our installations whether you cooperate or not, but cooperation would be appreciated. As her transmission ended, the human fleets began moving toward their destinations with purpose and precision. Their ships moved in formations that spoke of discipline refined over millennia. Whatever these humans had become during their long absence, they were clearly not the same species that had left so long ago. The galaxy's perfect civilization was about to learn just how wrong their history books had been. The evacuation of human space began at dawn on 100 different worlds. But as the galaxy's species prepared to withdraw, they witnessed something that shattered their understanding of history itself. On the agricultural world of Green 3, the biosynthesis Commonwealth colonists watched in amazement as the ground beneath their feet began to transform. What they had thought was natural bedrock revealed itself to be something far more extraordinary. Vast metal structures rose from the earth, their surfaces covered in symbols that seemed to shift and change as they watched. Dr. Vel 9, the colony's chief scientist, ran her scanning equipment over the emerging installation. Her readings made no sense. "The materials are impossible," she reported to her supervisors. "This metal is stronger than anything we know how to make, but it's also somehow alive. It's responding to our presence." As the installation fully emerged, it became clear that it wasn't just a building, it was a fortress, bristling with defensive systems that operated on principles the galaxy had never seen. But more disturbing was what the installation revealed about the colony itself. "The agricultural systems," Dr. Vel 9 whispered in shock. "They're all connected to the human installation, the soil enhancement, the crop optimization, the weather control systems. It's all human technology. We've been using their tools for thousands of years without realizing it." Similar discoveries were happening across the galaxy. On the crystal mining world of Shard Prime, Zephyrian engineers discovered that their most efficient extraction techniques were based on human designs hidden in their own equipment. The patterns they thought they had invented were actually human algorithms, embedded so deeply in their technology that they had become invisible. Emperor Crystallis himself traveled to oversee the evacuation of human space, his massive crystal form radiating fury and confusion. "This is impossible," he declared to his advisors. "We built our civilization from our own brilliance. We evolved beyond the crude human ways." But Chief Engineer Quartz 12 had disturbing news. "Your Majesty, I've been analyzing our foundational technologies. The quantum resonance systems that power our cities, the neural interface protocols that link our minds, even our basic crystal growing techniques, they all contain human mathematical principles." "What are you saying?" Emperor Crystallis demanded. "I'm saying that what we thought was natural Zephyrian evolution was actually guided development. The humans left blueprints hidden in our early technology. We've been following their plans for 48,000 years. The revelation sent shock waves through the crystalline hierarchy. Their proud civilization, their claims of superiority over the primitive humans, were all built on human foundations." On Nexus Prime, Archivist Tel 4 was making even more disturbing discoveries. The corrupted data he had noticed during the celebration was spreading through the archives. But it wasn't corruption at all. It was the truth, finally being revealed. "Admiral," Tel 4 called to Admiral Thex Prime, his bioluminescent patches flickering with excitement and fear. "You need to see this. The historical records are changing. No, not changing. They're showing what was always there, hidden beneath layers of false data." The new records painted a completely different picture of human history. Instead of primitive warmongers, the files showed humans as an incredibly advanced species that had taken younger races under their protection. The galaxy's current inhabitants weren't the inheritors of their own civilizations. They were children that humanity had raised. "Look at this." Tel 4 pointed to a holographic display showing the ethereal collective's early history. "The records show that the ethereals were originally corporeal beings. They achieved energy transformation through human technology, but the process was dangerous, potentially fatal." Admiral Thex Prime studied the data with growing unease. "What are you saying? The humans didn't just give them the technology. They stayed and guided the transformation process for thousands of years, making sure each ethereal made the change safely. They were midwives to an entire species' evolution. Similar records existed for every major species in the galaxy. The Zephyrians had been small, barely sentient crystal creatures until human intervention helped them develop intelligence and networking capabilities. The biosynthesis Commonwealth had been ordinary organic beings until human genetic engineering gave them shape-shifting abilities. "The Great Liberation," Tel 4 said quietly, "wasn't the galaxy defeating humanity. It was humanity's graduation ceremony for their students. But the most shocking discovery came from the deep archives, files so heavily protected that they required direct human authorization to access. Authorization that arrived in the form of Admiral Chen Okafor herself. She appeared not as a hologram, but in person, transported directly into the archive chamber by technology that bypassed every security system on Nexus Prime. Admiral Thex Prime and his guards raised their weapons, but the Admiral simply raised her hand. "Please," she said calmly. "We're not here to fight. We're here to show you the truth." Her touch activated archive systems that had been hidden for millennia. The chamber filled with holographic displays showing the real history of the galaxy. But this history included something else, something terrible. 48,000 years ago, Admiral Chen Okafor began, humanity detected signs of an invasion from outside normal space-time. Entities we call the Devourers, beings that consume entire realities, turning them into gray void. The holographic displays showed images that made Admiral Thex Prime's biomechanical systems shudder. Vast, impossible creatures that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Fleets of ships that looked like living nightmares. Worlds turned into empty husks, drained of all life and matter. "We had a choice," the Admiral continued. "We could stay and fight with the technology we had, and probably lose, dooming the entire galaxy. Or we could leave, spend millennia developing the weapons and defenses needed to win, and return when we were ready." "But what about us?" Admiral Thex Prime asked. "You left us defenseless." Admiral Chen Okafor smiled sadly. "No, we didn't. We left you with everything you needed to survive and grow. The technology we embedded in your civilizations, the installations we hid across the galaxy, the genetic improvements we made to your species. It was all preparation for this day." She gestured to the emerging human installations visible through the chamber's windows. "Every human facility is a defensive strongpoint. Every piece of technology we left behind can be weaponized against the Devourers. We didn't abandon you. We prepared you." "But the historical records," Telfor protested. "They say humans were primitive, violent." "A necessary deception," the Admiral replied. "If your species had known the truth, they would have spent 48,000 years in terror waiting for an invasion that might never come. Instead, they built peaceful, prosperous civilizations. They grew strong without the burden of fear." Admiral Thex Prime's world view was crumbling around him. "So everything we've believed is a comforting lie that served its purpose," Admiral Chen Okafor confirmed. "But now the Devourers are stirring. Our long-range sensors detected the first. Signs 6 months ago. Reality distortions in deep space. Dimensional barriers weakening. They're coming." She turned to face both alien officers directly. "The question now is whether you'll stand with us or whether you'll cling to the lies that kept you safe all these years." Before either could answer, emergency alarms began wailing throughout Nexus Prime. The space around the station filled with more dimensional rifts, but these were different from the ones that had brought humanity home. These rifts were wrong somehow, twisted and dark, like wounds in reality itself. Through the rifts came scouts, not ships, but living contradictions to physics, creatures that existed in too many dimensions at once, their forms shifting between states of matter and energy. Their very presence made nearby space flicker and distort. "The Devourers," Admiral Chen Okafor said grimly. "They're early." As the scout entities began probing the galaxy's defenses, the human installations across known space suddenly blazed to life. Weapons that had slept for millennia charged with power that made nearby stars dim in comparison. The galaxy's comfortable lies were over. The real war was about to begin, and whether the galaxy's inhabitants liked it or not, they were about to learn what humanity had really left them. Not primitive ruins, but the tools they would need to survive the impossible. The first Devourer scout reached the Outer Rim mining colony of Rock 7 at 2347 Galactic Standard Time. The colonists never knew what hit them. Mining Supervisor Kex 3 was reviewing the day's extraction reports when reality simply stopped making sense around her. The walls of her office began to fade, becoming transparent and then non-existent. The air itself started to lose its substance, becoming thin and gray. Her workers' voices echoed from everywhere and nowhere at once, before falling silent. In the bay, space of 17 minutes, Rock 7 ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not vaporized, but erased. Where a thriving mining operation had been, there was now only empty void. Even the asteroid the colony had been built on was gone, leaving nothing but a sphere of nothingness that hurt to look at. Admiral Chen Okafor watched the destruction from the bridge of her flagship, the UES Eternal Vigilance. The ship was a cathedral of war, its interior spaces vast enough to house cities. Around her, officers who looked human but moved with inhuman precision monitored displays that tracked the Devourer scouts across the galaxy. "Report," she ordered, her voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. Commander Torres, her tactical officer, consulted readings that would have been impossible for earlier human technology to detect. 17 scout entities active across the galaxy. They're probing our defenses, testing response times. The installations are tracking them, but the scouts are staying just outside weapons range. Clever, Admiral Chen Okafor mused. They remember our capabilities from the last war. They're being cautious. Admiral, Communications Officer Liu interrupted. We're receiving priority transmissions from Nexus Prime. The Galactic Confederation is requesting an emergency meeting. The Admiral's expression didn't change. Tell them to meet us at the Kepler 452b installation. It's time they understood what they're really facing. An hour later, representatives from every major galactic power gathered in the vast chamber that had risen from the ruins of the former human colony. The space was impossibly large, its walls covered with displays showing the galaxy in real time. Every star system, every world, every ship was visible as points of light on the massive three-dimensional map. Emperor Crystallis entered first, his crystal form larger and more elaborate than any of his subjects had ever seen him wear. Behind him came the collected leadership of the ethereal collective, their energy forms crackling with nervous power. The Biosynthesis Commonwealth sent their greatest shapeshifter, currently wearing the form of a humanoid giant with silver skin. Admiral Thex Prime represented the Confederation Defense Fleet, his biomechanical body clicking as he walked. Beside him, Archivist Tel 4 carried data storage units containing the newly revealed historical records. They found Admiral Chen Okafor standing before a display that showed the galaxy's edge where reality was beginning to fray. Dark spots appeared and disappeared on the map, marking places where Devourer scouts had tested the dimensional barriers. 57 probes in the last 6 hours, she said without turning around. They're mapping our defenses, learning our capabilities. Soon they'll send something bigger. Emperor Crystallis's form rang with imperial displeasure. Explain these creatures. What are they? Where do they come from? Admiral Chen Okafor finally turned to face the assembled leaders. They come from spaces between realities. Imagine that all of existence is like a book, with each reality being a page. The Devourers live in the margins, feeding on the ink that makes up the stories. She gestured, and the display changed to show incomprehensible mathematics and dimensional theories that made the alien observers' minds hurt. They're not alive in any sense we understand. They're hunger given form, entropy, with purpose. They find realities that have grown complex enough to be tasty, then they consume everything. Matter, energy, space, time, the very concepts that make existence possible. Admiral Thex Prime's biomechanical systems whirred as he processed this information. How did humanity discover them? We didn't, Admiral Chen Okafor replied grimly. They found us first. 50,000 years ago, Earth received visitors, a species called the predecessors, refugees from the Andromeda Galaxy. They brought warnings about the devourers and technology that let us see beyond our normal dimensional space. The display showed images of beings that looked like living starlight, graceful and ancient beyond measure. The predecessors had fought the devourers for millions of years across dozens of galaxies. They were losing. Their last act was to seed younger species with the knowledge and tools needed to eventually stop the consumption of all reality. What happened to them? The biosynthesis representative asked, her silver form rippling with curiosity. They became us, Admiral Chen Okafor said simply. The process of preparing to fight the devourers changes a species fundamentally. Humanity spent 48,000 years becoming something that could stand against entities that exist outside normal physics. She removed a glove, revealing skin that seemed to contain stars. When she moved her hand, space around it rippled slightly. We're still human in all the ways that matter. We love, we hope, we protect those we care about, but we've also become something more. Emperor Crystallis stepped forward, his crystal form refracting the chamber's light into angry patterns. Why didn't you warn us? Why the deception? Because civilizations that know about the devourers develop differently, Admiral Chen Okafor explained. They become focused entirely on war, on defense, on fear. They never achieve the diversity, creativity, and growth that make reality worth preserving. The galaxy needed to develop naturally, peacefully, without the shadow of this threat. Archivist Tel 4 activated his data storage unit, projecting new information into the chamber. The archives show that other galaxies tried different approaches. Some told their species about the threat immediately. The display showed dead galaxies, their stars turned gray and lifeless, consumed not by the devourers, but by the civilization's own desperate attempts to prepare for war. Fear destroys faster than any external enemy, Admiral Chen Okafor said, so we chose a different path. We left you tools disguised as natural development. We hid weapons in your infrastructure. We improved your species' capabilities without you realizing it. The genetic modifications, the biosynthesis representative breathed, understanding dawning in her silver features. Every species in this galaxy has been subtly enhanced over the past 48,000 years. Stronger, more adaptable, more resistant to the reality distortions the devourers create. You thought it was natural evolution, but we were preparing you for war. Commander Torres approached the Admiral with new tactical data. Ma'am, long-range sensors are detecting major dimensional distortions in the outer void. The scouts are withdrawing. Admiral Chen Okafor's expression became grim. That means the main force is coming. The real invasion begins soon. She turned back to the galactic leaders. You have a choice to make. You can accept the truth and stand with us, using the tools we left to defend reality itself. Or you can cling to your comfortable lies and face extinction. Emperor Crystallis was silent for a long moment, his crystal form cycling through different patterns as he processed everything he had learned. If we fight alongside you, what are our chances? Unknown, Admiral Chen Okafor replied honestly. The devourers are stronger than they were 50,000 years ago. They've consumed entire galactic clusters since then. But humanity is stronger too, and you've had time to grow and develop in ways that might surprise them. Admiral Thex Prime stepped forward, his biomechanical form straightening with military precision. What do you need from us? Everything, the Admiral said simply. Every ship, every world, every being capable of fighting. The devourers don't take prisoners, and they don't negotiate. This is a war for the right of reality to continue existing. As if summoned by her words, the chamber's displays suddenly blazed with urgent warnings. Massive dimensional rifts were opening throughout the galaxy, but these weren't the clean tears that had brought humanity home. These were wounds in space-time itself, bleeding impossible light and shadow. Through the rifts came the Devourer Vanguard, ships that looked like living nightmares, their hulls made of crystallized void. Creatures that existed in too many dimensions at once, their forms shifting between states of matter and antimatter, weapons that fired compressed nothingness, turning whatever they touched into gray emptiness. The real war begins now, Admiral Chen Okafor announced as the human installations across the galaxy blazed to life, their weapons charging with power that made nearby stars flicker. Whether you're ready or not, the comfortable age of galactic peace was over. The age of the Devourer War had begun. The main Devourer fleet emerged from the wounds in reality like a plague of living darkness. Their ships numbered in the millions, each one a contradiction to the laws of physics. Some were vast as moons but weighed nothing. Others were small as fighters but contained the mass of stars. All of them radiated an wrongness that made nearby space itself recoil. Admiral Chen Okafor stood on the bridge of the Eternal Vigilance as her fleet prepared for the battle that would determine the fate of all existence. Around her, officers moved with inhuman precision, their enhanced reflexes and expanded consciousness allowing them to process information at speeds that would have killed ordinary humans. "Fleet status report," she commanded. Commander Torres's voice carried impossible calm. "All human fleets operational. 67 million vessels ready for combat. Defense installations across 400 systems are fully charged. Dimensional anchor points are stable. Galactic allies?" Mixed response. The Zephyrian Empire has committed their full fleet. The Ethereal Collective is providing support, but many of their members are struggling to accept the situation. The Biosynthesis Commonwealth is adapting. On Nexus Prime, the emergency session of the Galactic Confederation had devolved into chaos. Some species demanded immediate surrender, convinced that resistance was hopeless. Others called for total war, their pride refusing to accept that they needed humanity's help. Emperor Crystallis had split his own empire down the middle. Half of his crystal fleets had joined the human defensive formations, their crews accepting the terrible truth about their history. The other half remained in Zephyrian space, their commanders claiming the whole situation was an elaborate human trick. But the Devourers didn't care about galactic politics. The first major engagement occurred in the Vega system, where a human defensive installation had been built inside the star itself. Devourer assault ships phased into normal space around the star, their reality distortion weapons beginning the process of consuming the massive fusion furnace. The response was immediate and terrifying. The star itself became a weapon. Solar flares, lanced out with impossible precision, each one guided by human technology hidden in the star's core. The flares didn't just burn the Devourer ships, they unmade them, reversing the process that had brought them into existence. But the Devourers adapted quickly. Their next wave arrived equipped with reality stabilizers, devices that prevented the local laws of physics from being rewritten. The human installations found their weapons suddenly operating within normal parameters, their godlike abilities reduced to merely advanced technology. "They remember us," Admiral Chen Okafor observed as she watched the tactical displays. "They've prepared for our capabilities." The battle escalated rapidly. Human ships that could phase between dimensions found themselves locked into normal space. Weapons that rewrote matter at the quantum level discovered their targets were quantum-locked. For every advantage humanity had developed over 48,000 years, the Devourers had prepared a counter. But humanity had prepared for this too. "Activate Protocol Omega," Admiral Chen Okafor ordered. "All ships, all installations. It's time to show them what we really learned." Across the galaxy, human technology began to change. The ships that had seemed impossibly advanced revealed themselves to be holding back. Their hulls flowed like liquid metal, reconfiguring into forms that hurt to perceive directly. Their weapons stopped being weapons and became something else entirely, tools for editing reality's source code. The Eternal Vigilance led the transformation. Admiral Chen Okafor felt her ship becoming something beyond a mere vessel as its consciousness merged with her own. She was no longer commanding a ship. She was the ship, her awareness expanding to encompass light years of space. Around her, her fleet underwent similar changes. Human crews didn't just pilot their vessels anymore, they became them. Their consciousness expanded beyond individual existence while somehow remaining perfectly human in all the ways that mattered. The effect on the Devourer forces was immediate and devastating. These creatures that existed outside normal physics suddenly found themselves facing opponents who had transcended physics entirely. Human ships began moving through dimensions that didn't exist, attacking from directions that had no names. But the Devourers were not defenseless. Their response was to unleash entities that made their scouts look harmless by comparison, creatures that existed as pure negation, their very presence causing nearby reality to forget how to exist. They moved through the battlefield like living black holes, not just destroying human ships, but erasing the concepts that had made them possible. The war became something beyond physical combat. It was a battle between existence and void, between the stories that made up reality and the silence that sought to end them all. Entire star systems became battlegrounds where the laws of physics were suggestions rather than rules. On the agricultural world of Green 3, the colonists watched in terror as the sky above them fractured like broken glass. Through the cracks, they could see the battle raging in dimensions their minds couldn't fully comprehend. Human and Devourer forces clashed in spaces that existed sideways to normal reality. But then something unexpected happened. The biosynthesis Commonwealth colonists began to change. The genetic modifications humanity had made to their species 48,000 years ago suddenly activated, triggered by proximity to the dimensional distortions. Their shape-shifting abilities exploded beyond anything they had known was possible. They began shifting not just their forms, but their entire existence, becoming beings that could survive in the fractured reality the war was creating. Similar awakenings occurred across the galaxy. Zephyrian crystals found they could resonate with frequencies that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Ethereal beings discovered they could maintain coherence even when local space-time became contradictory. Every species touched by human enhancement began manifesting abilities they had never known they possessed. The tide of war began to shift. Emperor Crystallus, leading a combined Zephyrian human fleet, found his consciousness expanding as his crystal form resonated with human dimensional technology. For the first time in his existence, he truly understood what humanity had given his people. "We're not just fighting for our galaxy," he broadcast to his fleets, his voice carrying across impossible distances. "We're fighting for the right of stories to exist, for love, art, dreams, hope, everything that makes existence worth preserving." The final phase of the war began when Admiral Chen Okafor made a decision that would have been impossible for any ordinary human. She ordered the human fleet to phase shift the entire galaxy, using technology that had taken 48,000 years to develop. Humanity began moving their entire home galaxy into a pocket dimension, a space between spaces where the Devourers couldn't follow. But the process required incredible sacrifice. Human ships across the galaxy began burning themselves out, their crews pouring their own life force into the dimensional engines. They didn't die. Instead, they became part of the translation process, their consciousness merging with the galaxy itself to guide its passage between realities. Admiral Chen Okafor was the last to merge. As the Eternal Vigilance became one with the dimensional barriers protecting the galaxy, she felt her individual existence dissolving into something larger while somehow remaining herself. The Devourers found themselves attacking empty space. The galaxy they had come to consume had simply stepped outside of reality's normal rules, protected by barriers woven from human consciousness and alien hope. From their pocket dimension, the galaxy's inhabitants could see the Devourers raging in the space they had once occupied. But they could also see something else. Other galaxies, other realities that had survived by learning the same lessons humanity had taught. They were not alone in their resistance to the void. Admiral Chen Okafor's voice, now speaking from the dimensional barriers themselves, addressed the galaxy one final time. "We told you we came home to protect what we left behind," her words echoed through every world, every ship, every consciousness in their pocket reality. "But the truth is, you protected yourselves. The courage, creativity, and hope you developed during our absence, that's what really saved us all." The galaxy settled into its new existence, forever changed, but forever free. The species that had once believed they were the inheritors of a primitive human legacy now understood they were the children of guardians who had loved them enough to let them find their own strength. And in the spaces between realities, where time moved differently and possibilities were infinite, they began to plan for the day they would emerge to help other galaxies learn the same lessons. The age of hiding was over. The age of teaching had begun. Humanity had returned not as conquerors, but as the guardians they had always been, and their galaxy's delusion had indeed been crushed, replaced by something far more powerful, the truth of what they could become when they worked together. The fleet that had emerged from the void had brought more than advanced technology. They had brought hope, and in the end, that proved to be the most powerful weapon of all.